we're back with Patrick, and today we're going to talk about Patrick's favorite movies and his favorite directors. So, I know you're an expert in this subject, right? I know you watched a lot of classic films, and
I'm only an expert
yeah
on the things I like.
Well, I'm just asking your opinion. So,
Okay.
yeah, what do you think is the best movies you've seen, the best directors
All
that
right.
you watched?
So, the first question would probably be best directors.
Sure.
Favorite movies.
Whichever one you want to answer first.
All right. In no particular order, my favorite directors are Darren Aronofsky, Soderbergh, Quentin Tarantino. For all you people who didn't go to, school to learn about screenwriting or anything, Quentin Tarantino is kind of like the people's champ. He didn't go to school to learn art; it was just inside him. Stanley Kubrick.
Yep. Akira Kurosawa. Yep.
Although for Kurosawa, I admire him for his visual storytelling rather than his screenplay dialogue. But that's a part of cinema, so you have to put that in there. And
Christopher
Nolan.
James Cameron.
But you have, when you talk about Christopher Nolan, you have to talk about his brother too.
Yeah. Because
they co-write a lot of their stuff. James Cameron.
Yep.
I don't particularly like his movies, but I like him as a director because he's the only movie director that can do everything. If he could, do the sound design, he could do lighting design, he could screenwrite, he can direct.
Yep.
He has enough money to executive produce. He can edit. He can do everything. You won't see like Scorsese holding up the microphone. He doesn't know anything about sound design compared to James Cameron. So James Cameron, I don't like his movies. I like him because I think he mastered every aspect of filmmaking technically. So he's very well rounded.
He didn't make a lot of films, but the ones he made were pretty commercially successful, right?
Yeah. There's a movie called Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens.
Yeah, so
I think that was his first. Was that his first really big one?
Well, Ridley Scott,
yeah,
which is another really good director, but he's not one of my favorites, but I respect him.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott did the first Aliens. Ridley Scott actually comes from a commercial film background. Anyways,
yeah,
he directed Aliens Part 1.
Yeah.
So, since that was suspenseful, and that was the first horror / science fiction movie that ever got popular. So, Part 2, Ridley Scott didn't direct Aliens Part 2. That was James Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that is, it was going to be, they filmed Aliens Part 2 in England, just like Aliens Part 1. And they used a lot of the same crew that they used for the first one. So, you get all these British people and they have an allegiance to, Ridley Scott, right?
Yeah.
But this time around, the producers got this new guy. His name is James Cameron. He's younger. He's an American. So, they kind of give him some flack, In England, there's a certain time of the day. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's a certain time of the day that you drink tea. No, seriously. It doesn't matter
I heard about that.
You're like a tax accountant or you work on a movie set. It's like, I think it's like 10 a.m. or it could be like 2 p.m. Everyone has to stop what you're doing and drink tea. But that ain't the American style. American style, it's kind of like there's no form. We're shooting it till it's shot, okay? Or until we feel like we need a break.
Yeah.
So long story short, they really gave James Cameron hell. The sound guy gave him hell. The lighting guy gave him hell. But James Cameron he knew how to do, all aspects of film. So long story short, he started doing other shit rather than just directing Aliens 2. So that's why I respect him, is because they tried to do like a mutiny. You know what a mutiny is, right?
Yeah.
On him, on the set.
Yeah.
But the problem is, he could do like everyone else's job. So I feel like directors, especially these days, they only know one aspect of cinematography or cinema. And so that's why my last choice for my favorite is a director that I don't particularly think highly of his movies. Yeah.
Would you say directing is? Would you rather do directing or producing? Which one is like harder?
I think well,
for example, like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, right? That both of them have done directing and producing, right? Like like
in my opinion, producing is a little easier. It's not easy, but it's easier. For producing, you know, especially if you're executive producing and you're financing a film, you have to learn about marketing, forecasting audiences, forecasting if basically, are you getting your money back and are you making a profit? That's what a lot of the producers worry about, because they're producing media to produce money, right? They're not doing it for fun. So so for that aspect, it is hard. But for a director, dude, directors, I think they age a couple of years every time they do like a really, really big movie. George Lucas had a heart attack during the first Star Wars.
Also, if the movie, like, if people don't like it, they usually crap on the director. They don't go after the producer, right?
They don't go after the producer. They don't go after the screenwriter. They don't go after the cameraman or the crew.
Like Rian Johnson, clear example, right? Everyone went for him, right?
Everyone went for him, but a lot of people don't know that a lot of the stuff that people are complaining about, it all came from Kathleen Kennedy, right? So, like, you know, sometimes when you're a director, your hands are tied. You know, the director directs. He's kind of like the general, but the executive producer is like the president. Okay, the general is the general. He's a leader in the battlefield, but ultimately he reports to the president, and that's the executive producer. So but it sucks because when you look for someone to blame, you're gonna blame Rian Johnson. So I know you've been blaming him a lot, and I keep telling you,
most people do.
It's not just him, man. I mean, like,
but he did write the script, right? So
okay, let me put it this way. George Lucas, right, for the first Star Wars, right? You know how he directed it, right? But he got a heart attack and he's getting stressed out because the producers kept wanting him to change shit. See, he's directing it, but he doesn't have full control. If the producers say, we need to change this, you kind of got to change it, right? So, and then when you do change it and then it's bad, they blame the director. So that's why I can't really blame Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson's good. He did Looper, right? Looper was a good movie. And then what movie did he do after? Oh, he did Knives Out. That was a good movie. It was good, you know?
I think it's not that Rian Johnson's a bad director. People just didn't like him directing a Star Wars movie. Because it was, J.J. Abrams, he didn't have any future plan for the trilogy. So then Rian wrote he wrote the script in a way that people didn't like because it, contradicted a lot that was in The Force Awakens. So,
well, I think if you're like a screenwriter, or you're like a director, right? And you're going to, add something to a franchise, right? You gotta have to like leave your mark. You have to leave your motif. It can't be like, it can't be like, I don't know who directed this, like bland, you have to add your flavor. So he added some stuff in there.
It's like too different for a lot of people.
Well, what would people say if it was predictable?
Well, can you do something that's not as predictable, like it not predictable, but not completely different. Like,
let me just say one thing,
yeah.
right? And we're segueing to Star Wars, and we always talk about.
I know we always
Star
segue to
Wars,
Star
right?
Wars.
So the question was, who are your favorite directors? Now we're talking about a director I don't even like.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good, but he's not like one of my favorites. Okay. Rian Johnson. So here's the thing, right? With Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It's like selective criticism, and we've talked about this before, right? The Phantom Menace and A New Hope, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's some dude, right? And he's young, right? And he lives in the desert, right? He's picking junk, right? And he's kind of good with fixing shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good when they copied each other, but when the girl does it, oh fuck, it's not original now. Why she got to be on a planet too? Why she got to do all this shit, right? And then here comes Rian Johnson. Well, you know what? I'm gonna change shit. It's gonna be a little bit different. That's something you're not used to.
Yeah.
And then now they're like, oh, he fucked it up. So if he would have just like did the cookie cutter Star Wars stuff and made shit predictable, he's damned, because they were like, oh, he didn't really put his input into it. He didn't bring his Rian Johnson flair to it. It's like one of those X-Men movies, right? The X-Men movie, you don't even care who directed it, right? It's just like they all kind of just feel like the same shit, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think it's better to have something that's controversial and people talk about rather than something that's overlooked, right?
That's true.
You know, so secondly, we can't fully blame him. We don't know what Kathleen Kennedy was saying to him during the meetings, you know?
Yeah.
His movie, like, if Rian Johnson had total control, it might have been like a little bit more cohesive, right? But Kathleen Kennedy would probably be like, you know, the purchasing power for females in the entire world has gone up a certain percentage.
Yeah.
And this movie is a global movie, you know, so we have to represent the unrepresented future
the minorities
ticket holders, right?
Yeah.
So we had to be a little bit more fair. So that might have made Ryan have to, like, you know, adjust his script a little bit, you know? You never know, you know? So, and in there, you know, we'll know about 5 years from now. If, you know, usually years later, the director really talks about, like, what really happened.
Yeah.
You know? Just like Superman 2. You know? They had, was it 2 or 3? They had two directors. They had the Donner cut, and they had this other guy.
You heard for the Justice League, they're releasing a Zack Snyder cut now too.
Well, the thing about that, the reason why Zack Snyder had to leave is because he had a death in the family. So they didn't kick him out or anything. He just had too much shit on his plate. Yeah. But it's kind of funny because they got the director who directed a movie that they're competing, you know, with. Well, DC's competing with Marvel.
It's kind of funny because Zack Snyder's movies weren't that praised to begin with, and then like Justice League wasn't a good movie, but I don't think the Snyder cut's gonna be. What did
Snyder do? He did 300, right? Oh no, Sin City, right?
Yeah, but he also make like he did like Man of Steel, right? Batman versus Superman. So
that one was all right.
It wasn't good. So I don't know.
Hey,
it might be better.
Hey, it wasn't good.
Maybe by not by a lot.
Think about it, man.
Yeah.
They wrote Superman's origin story in the 40s. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the 40s was like, was it the 30s or 20s?
Late 30s or something like that.
Okay, so they were just starting off writing comic books, right?
Yeah.
So for the 30s, going outside the box is like, okay, there's this alien child, he lands on Earth.
Yeah.
And we raise him as an Earthling, but he has superpowers. For that time, that's like crazy, right? You fast forward to the 60s, everyone's an alien, you know? So that's why his origin story is kind of boring, right? And we've seen how many times they reboot Superman, right?
Oh, they did Superman Returns too.
And then they
with Brandon Ruth, yeah.
And then they got Smallville, right? So
Smallville.
We've seen his origin over and over. So it's like, the thing I praise about the Superman movie is, I don't know, Russell Crowe was his dad, you know, so that was kind of cool.
All right, so I want to get back on topic. So
okay,
for me, I want to talk about my favorite. So you talk about your favorite. Talk about my favorite directors too, and I think for the current generation, it's definitely Christopher Nolan. I think Wes Anderson is good too. Tarantino, but I think I put Nolan above them, just like you can tell like the attention to detail, especially with sound, with the soundtrack that he puts into his movies. Interstellar, Inception.
Well, can I interject really quick?
Yeah.
I think Quentin Tarantino was one of the first directors to have music as kind of like a character in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And not just any music, obscure music. Like songs you probably heard of before, you know the melody, but you didn't really know like who sung it.
Well, like I said, remember the song I played, like the one used in Reservoir Dogs, right?
Stuck in the Middle with You.
Stuck in the Middle, and now everyone knows it. But at the time, I don't think anyone knew that song, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's what Quentin Tarantino does. He takes obscure songs and he actually makes them famous. If you look at Kill Bill, and you know that Japanese female band that goes like woo-hoo, woo-hoo-hoo. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He made that shit famous. So, yeah. You said that Christopher Nolan uses sound and soundtrack, but Christopher Nolan does it on a different level. Like I said, Quentin Tarantino, when the music is like a character, right? In the film, right?
Yeah.
Or is kind of like the theme song of a character, kind of like in wrestling.
Yeah.
In wrestling, every character has a theme song, but when Christopher Nolan does it, it changes the texture of the film.
Yeah.
It changed. It has like a constant emotion, constant texture, a motif. It changes the whole motif.
The way that Christopher Nolan uses it is different. He uses it a way more similar to Stanley Kubrick, which, by the way, is another one of my favorite directors. So, Stanley Kubrick actually pioneered this, right? The use of a motif in movies, right? Like 2001: Space Odyssey, right?
Yeah, with the monolithic wall,
with
right?
No, he put Blue Danube, right? The waltz, right? In that scene, right?
So, when they're floating in space.
Yeah, that was a classic scene. So he kind of pioneered it. But yeah, like the thing I like about Kubrick is all of his, he mastered almost every genre. He basically went into a different genre every time and he mastered it. So he's like, I want to do historical dramas in around the 1960s that was popular, right? So I'll do Spartacus, right? Mastered it. Then Lolita, right? He did a really controversial type of topic, mastered it, and then did Doctor Strangelove, right? Kind of like a black comedy type of movie, right? And he did Sci-Fi, 2001, Clockwork Orange, more of like a thriller type of movie, right? Barry Lyndon, like another historical epic drama. And then he did Full Metal Jacket with the war themes.
He has a well-rounded catalog.
And horror with The Shining, right?
Yeah.
So he mastered all these different genres.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut. So he has so many genres he mastered. So he's probably one of the most versatile directors.
There's a lot of scripts that were unfinished.
Yeah, like Napoleon, right? Napoleon was a famous one. It's probably the best movie that was never made, because he wrote the entire script for it, but because he was such a perfectionist, he couldn't finish it, right? Because he wanted everything to be accurate as possible, and they couldn't do that. So so Kubrick, if just talking about thrillers, Alfred Hitchcock, he's a master of that genre.
I think he's a master of suspense, though.
Yes,
it's like a thriller and suspense. That's two different things. Scream, like that's just like a slasher thriller movie, right? It's not really suspenseful. Hitchcock, he's the godfather of suspense.
Yeah,
he can have two people just talking, and during that conversation and during the scene, new information about the situation is kind of unfolding before your eyes, and you start to feel nervous. So I think he was like kind of like the first director to, really do that consistently. Yeah.
I mean, we saw like Rear Window and like Vertigo, right? North by Northwest, all these films. I think that no one really did those kind of films before. It's kind of like he was the first to introduce, that suspense, and he's basically Godfather, like you said.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. There's a lot of other old films, directors like Frank Capra, Francis Ford Coppola, right? Steven Spielberg I like just for his a lot of stuff he used is very groundbreaking in the way that we do films, like E.T., Jaws, Jurassic Park. A lot of them introduced kind of new ways, like new breakthroughs in technology.
Yeah.
So I'd say for Spielberg, it's more about the technology, right? So like CGI for Jurassic Park, that was, you know, really groundbreaking for its time, right? So and also the sound as well, because I remember, was it DTS? But for Dolby Digital and DTS, he was the first. I think he was one of the first to introduce that probably to the theaters, right? Yeah. So it was use of technology, I think, for Spielberg. And then I like James Cameron too. Terminator 2, right? Terminator. Did he do Terminator 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, Terminator 1 and 2. Yeah, Terminator 1 and 2, Titanic, Avatar, right?
That guy does different genres.
Yeah.
Think about it: Titanic and Terminator 2.
Did he? I don't think he directed.
And Avatar.
So yeah, but these guys. Oh, Spielberg produced Ready Player One. He didn't direct it, but I still like that movie. James Cameron, I believe, produced Alita: Battle Angel. I like that movie too.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's an underrated movie, by the way.
Yeah, I like it.
It was good.
Huh. Well, I didn't tell you why I like the directors.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so the first director I named, probably, depending on what day, is my favorite director, is Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
Because
he's not that well known. You can tell more about
well,
what.
he filmed Mother, The Wrestler, Black Swan, A Requiem for a Dream. The thing about him is the thing I like about Aronofsky is you get pulled into the story to the point that you are in the story. For instance, like the first 3 times that I saw Requiem for a Dream, Requiem for a Dream, you know what that movie's about, right? It's like mostly about heroin addicts and stuff like that.
I remember the soundtrack was very famous.
Well,
more than the movie.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff that he popularized.
Yeah.
But as for Requiem for a Dream, when I see that movie, I feel a sense of helplessness. Like, I feel like while I'm watching it, I'm falling into a black hole and I'm feeling helpless, right? That's hard to do. It's actually hard to do, you know, because I know I'm watching a movie, right? But he does it really well. For Black Swan, you know, if I'm watching it by myself and no one's talking to me, you know, I get to, you know, first of all, the good thing about that movie is he meshes 2 things that probably were never meshed before, you know, ballerinas and kind of like a horror thriller type of movie, right? But you get to see the nuances of the day-to-day life of a ballerina, and you get to see what makes them happy, what they're scared of, right?
Yeah.
And then just when you kind of like feel like you got the grasp of the movie, it kind of turns fucking strange for the last like 10 minutes, right? You're just like, I don't know. Aronofsky films are very visceral. I feel like I'm a part of that world when I'm watching it. You know, like when I watch Avatar, I know I'm watching a movie, you know? I don't feel like I'm flying when they're flying. I'm being entertained. But when I watch an Aronofsky film, like even like Mother, right?
Yeah.
When I watched Mother, I had the same feeling I had when I watched Requiem for a Dream. I had a feeling of helplessness. Because if you know about the movie about Mother, which has a lot of allegories to the Bible, I don't know. Aronofsky is just really good at making you feel like you're hopeless, which I feel is very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very easy to make something and make people excited and confident and uplift people. I think that's easier than making people feel extremely helpless. You know what I'm saying? Besides that, what other films have you seen that made you feel helpless?
Yeah, it's hard because you got to pull the audience really into the movie, right?
But he does it so slowly.
It's called suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of hard to do, and you have to be a good director to accomplish that. So, yeah.
And the thing I like about him is he doesn't really use a lot of special effects. I mean, he did with Black Swan, but with him, it's all about the dialogue, the writing, you know, and nowadays in 2020, you know, you can just CGI anything, but you can't really CGI won't really help his films, so it's all dialogue driven.
This goes back to what we said about the reason why indie films, like films with a smaller budget, they tend to be well written because they have to focus on the story and the script, because they don't have the budget for special effects. Like big budget movies, they use special effects as a crutch. So in case like they don't have good storylines or they're bad writing, but they kind of mask that by saying, oh, here's an explosion, here's like some CGI happening, so that the audience doesn't notice it as much. Right. That's I think for most like casual moviegoers, right, they just care about like the action and stuff like that.
Like Transformers,
Fast and Furious. So it's just Avengers and stuff. It's just action, stuff going on, stuff blowing up, right? But it's kind of to hide the fact that maybe the storyline, I mean, some of them are good, but then a lot of them are not, like the story's not that good, right? And they use that to hide the fact, right? Whereas for indie films, right, they don't have that. Like they don't have CGI, they don't have anything to hide that fact. It's just it's laid bare. So they have to rely on their stories. So that's why
they indie films, they're relying on the story, they're relying on the arcs that a character is going through from the beginning, the middle to the end. And also when you look at like all the winners for like the Palme d'Or, right, basically that's like the most prestigious like award in film there is, artistically, not sales, artistically. You never see like a heavily CGI affected film there. It's always going to be like a Parasite, or like Sex, Lies and Videotape, or Pulp Fiction, So what do those have in common? There's not a lot of special effects. It's just a lot of talking. It's a complex story arcs, or complex ways of telling the story, so a lot of people like Quentin Tarantino because he doesn't have a linear storyline, and that's what Soderbergh does, and they were kind of like the first people to like really do it really well in the 90s. And I believe that the 90s produced a lot of good American writers. And after the 90s, we had a lot of action movies. We pushed the boundaries of visual effects.
I think 90s was the last decade like that was really kind of creative. Right?
Dialogue-wise.
So I mean, no, it's just after 2000s. I mean, there's still good films, but it's starting to be dominated more and more about sequels, remakes, action stuff. Right? Because that's what makes money. So we start to see less of if you look at the most popular movies in the 50s and 60s, right? The Lawrence of Arabia or something like that, or 2001, like those films, like if they got made today, they wouldn't be the most popular.
Oh, they wouldn't. Well, audience today have like a shorter attention span.
The shorter attention span,
So, I think the 90s produced a lot of great screenwriters, and they had to push the envelope on how to convey the information to the audience in weird ways. Tarantino kind of scrambled everything, like when you play mahjong, scrambled everything together so everything's out of place, and it's out of place, but it makes sense. What I'm saying? I think for superheroes, I think superhero movies, I think in the 2000s were kind of pretty good, especially like the Spider-Man movies.
Sam Raimi.
They didn't have too much special effects. They had more of a storyline.
I think it's the third one they kind of stuffed too much in there, so that's why people don't like it. But the first two are good. The first two are good.
The second one is good.
The second one was really good. That's
So I mean,
I think that's why Logan was so good, because Logan, if you notice, they didn't focus that much on the superpowers in that movie. Right?
They focused on his character.
On his character.
His fears.
And actually he was get crippled in that movie because the virus or something, right? So they had to focus more on his powers and his character than his powers. So I think that's why.
It's so
In
That's why I like Aronofsky.
In Joker, same thing. His Joker didn't have any powers, so he had to focus on his character, right?
Technically, okay, we're segueing, but
Yes.
when I hear a person say that Joker doesn't have any powers, I don't know. He actually does have powers.
Mm-hmm.
It was brought to light in the comic books that there's this type of chemical that allows him to live essentially like a vampire.
Oh, okay.
So they're speculating that Joker's a couple hundred years old.
Oh.
and the chemical that turned him white and his hair green is kind of like it kept him alive. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. We'll talk about this in a different podcast, but the Joker backstory was brought to light about 2 years ago. Yeah, so it's kind of funny because people just think he's a psychotic guy. I used to think that. Yeah. But if he does have a superpower, it's probably immortality.
Interesting. That's why you couldn't kill him?
No, Batman doesn't want to kill Joker because Batman, he's a pretty moral person, right? And, you know, he thinks Joker's insane, right? And some people, they're born insane. They don't choose to be insane. They're born insane. So they don't know if they're doing good or not. In their eyes, they're doing good, right? So I think he gives them mercy. He doesn't want to kill him, you know, never kills him. But he could kill him anytime he wants to, you know? And, but the Joker is a vampire.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, we keep getting like off topic. But what other directors did I say?
Kurosawa, Kubrick.
Okay, I'm just gonna go by this really fast. Kurosawa, because telling the story through camera movement and cinematography, for his time, no one's done it better than him. And I attribute that to him not ever wanting to be a movie director anyways. He wanted to be a painter. Yeah. So, you know, a painter has a canvas and he puts whatever he feels on the canvas for the whole world to see. So when he started using cameras and stuff, he started framing stuff unlike anyone else who was studying cinema, right? So, long story short, anime owes a lot to Akira Kurosawa. Tarantino owes a lot. Scorsese owes a lot.
Most of modern filmmakers have been influenced by Kurosawa. He's like the most filmmaker that most people don't know about, that like every filmmaker they know about was influenced by.
Yeah. And I think that is because he didn't study film. He ended up being a director, and he wanted to be he wanted to paint pictures, you know. And when you put someone with a different background, you get different results. And then when you have everyone else just like going to the same type of art schools with the same curriculum, you're gonna get similar stuff. So yeah, I put him up there with Kubrick. So Kubrick.
What's your favorite movie by his, by the way?
Kurosawa.
Yojimbo.
Yojimbo is my favorite because it. Everyone always says Seven Samurai, but Yojimbo, it's because I see the direct translation of influence to Tarantino. Also,
Kill Bill.
A lot of people don't know that Akira Kurosawa actually worked with the lens manufacturers for his particular films. In a way, he was James Cameron before James Cameron. Because James Cameron, when he wants to make like Avatar, or if he wanted to do like Terminator 2, he works with the people making the technology to make his films. With Terminator 2, you know, the liquid, what's it, Mercury Man? Yeah, he was like, you know, working with those guys. Sony they created cameras just for his sequels. So that's how like he's kind of like Kurosawa, because he, on the technical aspect of filmmaking, he's like on there, right? Most directors leave that to the DP, you know. So that's why I like Kurosawa. All right. And then Steven Soderbergh, I like him because, you know, before Quentin Tarantino, he did the nonlinear storytelling, and he won a Palme d'Or for Sex, Lies, and Videotapes. And what was the last director I said?
Did you explain Kubrick already?
Well, Kubrick, all the things that you said, plus Kubrick's scenes. Kubrick is the Western version of Kurosawa, I believe. There would, because
he wasn't originally a filmmaker either, right?
I don't know.
I think he was like a photographer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But Kubrick is a perfectionist, which is a gift and a curse. But I like him because wow. I mean, I didn't really think about it, but you just pointed out like so many genres that he was shooting for,
Yep.
And also, I don't know. It's just like he was an emperor when he was directing, and he knew what he wanted, and no one else could tell him what he wanted, and that's why people kind of had a problem working with him. But and the use of music, Space Odyssey 2001, the ending, the music. So anytime you do something epic, you could put that music in the background, right? You could put that music in the background for the Lion King.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone uses that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ric Flair, right? He used that too.
Yeah.
But also, remember in the movie, you know how that had that monolithic slab, right?
Yep.
It had that weird like windy whistly type of sound effect. Yeah, so that it's just like kind of I feel like he is the foundation for what Christopher Nolan is right now for sound. Christopher Nolan took it to a different level, but Stanley Kubrick before him, no one really utilized sound as a very important motif for a scene, you know. And also he's just like weird when the monkey throws the bone in the air, and it fast forwards like I don't know, a million years, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of his jump cut, that was like the craziest jump cut in the history of film. So that's why I like Kubrick.
Most of Kubrick's stuff was so ahead of their time.
Yeah.
That's why they weren't praised in their time, but got praised later. Yeah.
That's why I say he's like Kurosawa. So Kurosawa actually didn't get like a lot of praise until like the 1980s, and that's for stuff he did in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Okay, and what other director did I say?
Do you already explain Cameron?
I did.
Okay, so then you went over.
Okay, yeah. All right.
But yeah, cool.